Well, folks, a bunch of protesters, both pro-Trump and anti-Trump, showed up outside the Manhattan courthouse in anticipation of Donald Trump's arrest yesterday. The media focused in a lot on the pro-Trump protesters. They did not focus in at all on the left-wingers. I wonder why. Maybe it's because they were crazy. The drama began when, just before Donald Trump pulled away from Trump Tower, there are a couple of different groups that mobilized themselves to locate in front of Trump Tower a pro-Trump group, an anti-Trump group, and they basically had kind of these small clashes. One of the anti-Trump people put out a giant banner that said Trump lies, and then a MAGA-hatted lady went over and started grabbing the banner. This is the circus, man, and we are all just spectators. Look at the number of media versus the number of protesters, by the way. I mean, this is all the media's creation in terms of why this is happening, because the media incentives for people like Alan Bragg are just too rich. In terms of why people are protesting and going out in the streets because there are cameras on them. Look at that, there's 100 cameras and like 2 people. It's ridiculous. Meanwhile, it is true that the amount of media coverage on the right-wing protesters was significantly higher than the amount of coverage on the left-wing protesters. Not a lot of traditional media coverage of, for example, this crazy lady who is out there screaming about race. This was pretty wild.
Why are you going in here and calling all the white people in here racist?
No, I'm calling them dumb Republicans.
No, you're calling them racist.
Yeah,
you call the white
all
man
white people are
racist.
racist.
All white people are racist.
You're
trying to instigate violence right now.
Because I'm black and I like violence.
Yeah?
I'm an animal. I'm an animal. I'm a black animal. I'm a black animal. Let's kill all white people. Yeah, baby.
So Biden 2024?
Biden 2024?
So she seems like an excellent prospective voter and somebody whose opinion we should take incredibly seriously. Well, all of this was the lead up to Donald Trump being brought in and then fingerprinted and booked. And there were some pictures of him, going into the building, some video of him walking into the courtroom, and he looks like Trump. I mean, he doesn't look particularly upset. He doesn't look particularly happy. He just looks kind of somber and determined, as he should. There are pictures of Trump that have now emerged from the court. You can look at some of the pictures so we can look at some of the visuals. It is Donald Trump. Here's Donald Trump sitting in the courtroom. You can see that he's surrounded by his lawyers. This is the big takeaway picture, and it's not a bad picture for Trump. I mean, if the optics matter here, then Trump obviously doesn't look wildly uncomfortable. He's not like sweating. He's not Richard Nixon in the 1960 presidential debate. He doesn't look like he's grief-ridden. He doesn't look like he's sad. He looks determined, as he should. Trump then went ahead and pled not guilty, as of course he was going to do. And then he sat quietly as the lawyers kind of talked with the judge and all the rest of it. The prosecutor who began to explain the charges, Chris Conroy, brought up threatening posts that Trump had made online, saying the former president had threatened New York City, the courts, and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which brought the charges against him. He handed paper copies of Trump's social media posts to the judge and to the defense lawyers. A lawyer for Trump, a guy named Todd Blanche, according to the New York Times, quickly objected, saying, "I didn't realize we were giving opening statements today." The district attorney, Alvin Bragg, was watching from the first row of the audience, so Blanche immediately laid into the prosecutors for the publicity around the case, which is correct. They've been leaking all sorts of material. He also criticized Michael Cohen, Trump's former fixer and a key witness, and Mark Pomerantz, a prosecutor who worked on the investigation under Bragg's predecessor and published a book about his experience. Trump basically just sat there. The judge, a guy named Juan Merchan, went out of his way to say he did not plan to place a gag order on Trump. But he said, quote, "I don't share your view," with Mr. Blanche, that would be Trump's lawyer, about the justification for Trump's harsher rhetoric. So Trump's lawyer said he's using harsh rhetoric because he has a right to speak as he wishes to speak on a matter of public concern, and he's in the middle of a presidential race, and he's being unfairly targeted. And the judge said, "I don't share your view." And then he urged witnesses of the case, as well as the defendant, to refrain from making statements, quote, with, quote, "the potential to incite violence and civil unrest." So he rejected the idea of a gag order, telling Trump he can't talk about the case. But he said that he might revisit that at some point in the future. Now, put that in the back of your mind, because that is going to come up very shortly, because Trump then gave a speech at Mar-a-Lago last night in which he said a bunch of things that the judge will undoubtedly find somewhat inflammatory. We'll get to more on this in just one second. First, it's time to talk to you about DailyWire's most trusted privacy partner and premier sponsor of this show, ExpressVPN. Does it make sense? The same company that controls half of online retail also passively eavesdrops on your private conversations at home. Big tech is more powerful than most countries. They profit by exploiting your personal data. It's time to put a layer of protection between your online activity and these tech juggernauts, which is why I use ExpressVPN. Think about how much of your life is on the internet. Every site you visit, video you watch, message you send gets tracked and data mined. ExpressVPN encrypts 100% of your internet data to keep you safe from hackers and eavesdroppers on your network, making it hard for big tech to track your activity and sell it to advertisers in the first place. I use ExpressVPN on all my personal devices, my phone, my laptop, even Wi-Fi routers. Very easy to use. Fire up the app, click one button, and you are done. It's just that simple. Stop handing over your personal data to the big tech monopoly that mines your activity and sells your info. Get the VPN I trust at expressvpn.com/Ben. Use my exclusive link, expressvpn.com/Ben. Get an extra 3 months for free. expressvpn.com/Ben. You never know who is watching your internet activity, so protect it today. expressvpn.com/Ben. Get an extra 3 months for free. Simple fact of the matter is, if you have family, if you have dependents, you have to have life insurance. It's just that simple. God forbid something is going to happen to you. You need to make sure that they are taken care of. And life insurance through your workplace might not offer enough protection for your family's needs. It's not going to follow you if you leave your job. And since life insurance typically gets more expensive as you age, now would be the time to do this if you didn't already do it yesterday. Policy Genius makes it easy to compare life insurance quotes from top companies and find your lowest price. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies starting at just $25 per month for $1 million in coverage. Some options offer coverage in as little as a week and avoid those unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius's licensed agents work for you, not those insurance companies, which means they don't have an incentive to recommend one insurer over another. You can trust their guidance. No added fees. Your personal information remains private. Your loved ones deserve a financial safety net, and you deserve a smarter way to find and buy it. So head on over to policygenius.com/Shapiro or click the link in the description. Get your free life insurance quotes. See how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Shapiro. Again, policygenius.com/Shapiro. Every responsible person should have life insurance. Policy Genius can make it easy for you to get it. policygenius.com/Shapiro. So as far as what comes next, well, the next step, presumably, is that there are pretrial hearings. There will be defense motions to dismiss. If the judge is smart, he dismisses the case because it's unbelievably weak. And then that could take months. In fact, the next time that Donald Trump is supposed to show up for an in-person hearing would be December 4th. December 4th of this year, according to Lauren Duvall, who is of CNN. That is nuts and obviously designed by people on the left in order to push this all the way into the presidential cycle, because every time Trump is in the news being persecuted by left-wing DAs, it boosts him in the primaries. So take this all the way into December, and this is just going to lurk over the entire 2024 presidential race. The left knows this. This is why they're in fact doing this. They've been pretty open about the fact that they want Trump to be the nominee, and they're certainly doing their best to ensure that that is precisely what happens. So all of that was lead up to Alvin Bragg himself doing a press conference. Finally, it was his moment in the sun. And again, this is the reason this is happening. It's so Alvin Bragg can have his moment in the sun. He can get his name in the news. He can be Elliot Spitzer before client number 9 and all that. He can be a famous prosecutor. He can be in that show, the one, he can be in Billions. He can be Paul Giamatti in Billions. This is the goal here for Alvin Bragg. He made that pretty clear in his press conference. All of this led up to Alvin Bragg finally releasing the indictment. We've read through the key part of the indictment, which again comes down to Donald Trump stole the election. And he stole the election by having Michael Cohen pay off Stormy Daniels. And then he didn't report it as a campaign finance report. And then he wasn't prosecuted for years because nobody thought that any of this was criminal. Because Trump has an easy and obvious defense, which is, I paid off Stormy Daniels. First of all, I think she's lying, which is what Trump says. But I paid her off mainly because I didn't want Melania upset. Right? That's a fairly good excuse. And remember, in a case that was very, very similar with regard to John Edwards and Rielle Hunter, right? She was his camera woman. He was married at that time to Elizabeth Edwards, his wife, who was cancer-ridden. And meanwhile, he was stripping the camera woman, and he got her pregnant. And he had his donors basically pony up $1 million to pay for child support and all the rest of this stuff to Rielle Hunter. And then he was prosecuted federally for this and ended up with a hung jury. So the chances that this was going to end up with some sort of conviction, pretty low, at least in the real world. But this isn't the real world. This is Manhattan. Already coming up is the rest of the show. You're not going to want to miss it. We get into the mailbag, answer some of your questions. Only members have their questions answered. If you're not a member, become one. Use code Shapiro checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click the link in the description and join us.